everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. You're obviously all here to hear about struggling readers, particularly in Year 6. So I'm joined by Steph and Kate. Steph, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Steph. I'm a Year 6 teacher in a primary school in Newcastle, and reading is very much part of my identity, and it is the thing that children associate me with the most in school.
I think that anyone that follows you on Instagram, Steph, will be able to tell that, because the stuff you post on there about reading is just amazing. And the lovely Kate. Kate, you'd like to introduce yourself?
Hi, yeah, I'm Kate Brindle. I've been a primary school teacher for 25 years or so. And one of the greatest joys in my life is reading to a class full of children. Nothing makes me happier than getting a big chapter book and making sure everybody's enjoying that story.
I think that is the best joy in teaching. That is my favourite part of it. So I'm Sophie. I've taught Year 6 for over a decade now. I've been English lead in 2 schools. And I think Steph and Kate probably agree, one of the biggest challenges, especially at the top end of the school, are readers that struggle, especially because the higher you go up the school, the wider the gap becomes in the ability of the readers of the children. So Steph, think about Year 6 particularly. How do you identify who is a struggling reader from the beginning of the year?
So we've actually got a really good process, and we've got really strong transition. So at the end of the year, every teacher meets up with the teacher before them. So in July, I met with our Year 5 teacher, and we had a really in-depth transition meeting, and we talked about who's working towards standard, who's at the expected standard, who is maybe got the potential to work at the greater depth standard, but not just them, but also what their barriers are. So is it a vocabulary thing? Is it a grammar thing? Is it a comprehension thing? And what we ask the teachers to do who are handing a class over is to come up with a bit of a intervention plan for the class. Like, oh, it might be good if these children have one-to-one, these might just need a little group. These guys are all fine. So we have a really solid start so that come January, come September, we're ready to start the ball rolling and off we go. We know who needs what and where.
So it's great to have that level of handover. But I know some schools do, and you might do as well. Do you have any kind of baseline data that you redo at the beginning of Year 6 to kind of help you with any of those, like plugging the gaps, or to let you know where they are after that summer break?
Last year was the first year we tried doing a SATs paper in Year 5. And I think it's going to be quite interesting when we come to do a SATs paper in Year 6, just to see how it compares. We do our first Year 6 assessment week at the end of this first half term to really right now. Then we've got 2 solid bits of assessment data to look at, but a lot of it is just ongoing and conversations with TAs. Actually, this isn't right for this child. This isn't right for this child.
Yeah, absolutely. And so those readers who you do identify as struggling, do you tend to find as well those are the ones that are less engaged with reading for pleasure and encourage them to read outside of the actual reading lesson? And if so, and Kate, it'd be interesting to hear from you as well, what do you do about that with the kind of reluctant readers? What are you kind of doing to encourage them to read? We're going to come on to this more later, but just in a nutshell.
So just as a taster and a little tease, we monitor what the children read. So I've just got a list. I've got a clipboard with all the children's names and what is it that they're reading. And we watch that, and then we listen to them reading RE lessons, because there's a lot of RE happens in my school. And we try and encourage them to read different things as well. So a lot of it is about them identifying themselves as readers as well. So we look at that, and we really focus on readers aren't just children who can read really thick books. It's anyone who can pick up a book and look at it and go, oh, this is what it is. So a lot of the first 3-4 weeks is teaching the children to identify as readers, not just the best readers or the children who read the longest books.
And Kate, do you have any additional ideas or things that you would do with the reluctant readers in your class?
Yeah, just give them the whole choice of the library. Don't restrict them to, one shelf that's for Year 4s, or, you can choose whatever book you like in here. You can have a picture book, you can have a chapter book. Even if I thought it was too difficult for them and they were choosing it for some other reason, letting them feel they're in control of that. They can take what they like. Even if they take it home and someone else reads it to them, it doesn't matter. I also had a kid who was really reluctant to read out loud anywhere near another human being, but he would happily read to his chicken at home. He had pet chickens, and his mum sent me a picture. He'd read to the chickens, whatever it takes.
Love that. Got to feed into each of their kind of quirks, haven't you, to get them hooked. So I guess as well, there are loads of different approaches to teaching reading. And the hard thing about year 6 is you have got the SATs. I say at the end of the year, it's not even hard at the end of the year, is it? It's 9 months into the year. And however you do choose to approach reading lessons, whether that's whole class reading or guided reading with different texts, at the end of, in May, they have to sit the same test to the same text. So I know whole class reading has become a lot more popular recently. It's personally how I would choose to teach it. And Steph, I think how you teach it as well. So Steph, how do you address doing a whole text in a class, the same text, when the reading abilities are but there's such a huge discrepancy between them?
So we predominantly spend the whole class reading with the teacher modelling reading. So I will read a page, a chapter, whatever it is that we are covering in that lesson. And within that, the children then have a go at reading for fluency themselves. So they've actually heard it probably multiple times, and then they have a go. I think it's really important that as teachers, you know the book really well as well. So you know the vocabulary that's coming. And then you can ensure that they've got that context before they then read it. Like Sophie, you'll know that Holes is a massive year 6 book. I think it's one of your favorites. But that needs a lot of context to it. So teachers knowing the books is great, but we all know that's not always like how it works.
So I'm going to put my hands up, Steph, and admit and hide that I have done this in the past, that I haven't always read a text before teaching. I know it's not best practice, but I just feel, and I know no teachers have the time, but I think I just always said to myself, I just haven't had the time. So I've used resources like my friends that read books avidly to check the main things, like, is there anything that I need to know to address with the class? So the book Once, for example, we did during World War II. I did read that beforehand. Obviously, that's got the topic of circumcision. So if you're reading that before in front of the class and you've not read it before, it's good to know, like you say about Holes with the whole, the racism aspect. It's good to know that before you teach a class. But I do have to admit, I haven't always done that. And I think it's, that's probably similar for a lot of teachers, that they pick up a book and pick up a resource to go with it and just deliver. Kate, can you admit to doing that as well, or is that just me?
I can't remember not reading one, but I can remember kind of forgetting where the plot was going and then remembering a child in the class struggling with a particular issue and me getting towards that in the chapter and thinking, I should not be reading this right now. This kid's not going to cope well with that.
Yeah.
He coped with it better than I did, to be honest. It was me who was crying by the end of it, but yeah.
It's easily done. I've only done it a few times, I think, because you reuse books. So you've done it the first time and then it doesn't happen again. But I just wanted to put my hands up there and be honest. So especially with the idea of teaching whole class reading and those readers that aren't necessarily going to be able to access that text independently, there need to be things we do for those children. So we're going to come on now to talk about successful reading interventions. Okay, so reading interventions, they can be a really difficult thing to deliver, particularly at the end of primary school, because you often find struggling readers, they've kind of tried everything that you've got at school. So by the time they get to year 6, you're left with, what are we doing now? So as English lead, for a few years, I've implemented an idea that was really, I learned from Chris Such's book, The Art and Science of Teaching Primary Reading. So a lot of it has come from that. So if you haven't heard of that, grab a copy. It's got really good implementable ideas. But there's sort of this 3-pronged approach, and we would do this throughout the whole of Key Stage 2, but I really just want to focus on year 6 for now. So if you think about your readers that aren't on track to meet ARE, they're going to kind of fall down this funnel of what are they actually struggling with reading. So the first level of reading struggle, I would say, is their ability to decode. So every child who isn't on track to meeting ARE at the beginning of the year, and however frequently you feel necessary, we would do a reading age assessment, but a single word assessment. So just assessing their ability to decode single words. There are loads of programs that do this. The one that I would use is Toe by Toe. Obviously, then those that do still struggle with decoding, you'd want to use the scheme that was linked to the assessment, if that makes sense. So we would then use Toe by Toe to plug any additional phonics gaps. It might be something like Read, Write, Ink, Fresh Start, but that would pick up the kind of first level of struggling readers. But then you might have another group that decode fine. So they're reading those individual words out loud fine, but they're still struggling when it comes to a text. So after decoding, the next kind of part of this funnel would be looking at their fluency ability. So how well are they reading out loud? Now, this kind of fluency assessment can be done with a variety of things. So you could use an age-related text, something from a SATs paper. There are loads of examples on LBQ of age-related text. You could use something from another assessment like NFER. And then typically you might a fluency assessment, assess them, how many words per minute are they reading? There are other rubrics you can use. So there's one by someone called Tim Rosinski online, which measures their expression, their volume, their phrasing, their smoothness and their pace, because it's been shown that the fluency of a reader relates strongly to how they comprehend that text as well. So when you have then measured the child's fluency and seen is it kind of up to standard, if it's not, that might be something that's really holding them back. So you could address that with something like, I know Hearts for Learning do a really good fluency project to help address those that are poor fluency. But really any aspects of teaching fluency, things like choral reading. So in a small group, you read a text all together. Echo reading, so you read a sentence and they repeat it back. You could do text marking. So if you put the text up in front of the children and then mark on, you can cut, there are official symbols for this, but you can choose your own. So listen to how I read it. This is where I've taken a pause. This is where I've raised the pitch of my voice. This is where I've sped up. Get the children to text mark and then to repeat back to you. Steph, I know you've got some brilliant ideas for fluency. Do you want to share any of them now?
Yeah, so we do a lot of rereading and over-reading. So within our interventions, the children have maybe the same text for 3 or 4 days. First day is literally just looking at it and reading it through, talking about any vocabulary. And as you say, like text marking it, where is it that we put emphasis? Where is it that we stop? And really looking at the punctuation and the meanings of the punctuation, how that affects the text. Then the second day, they'll read it again and they'll do a little task related to that. The third day, they'll read it again. By now, they've seen this text multiple times. They should be really, really fluent with it. And also, I think it's important to not be afraid to give them a text that's too easy. That's maybe a year 5 age-related expectation. That's maybe a year 4, depending on how fluent and other factors these children are. So rereading and over-reading really, really helps.
So, I mean, after you find there aren't many children that are really good at decoding words, really fluent in their reading, but then struggle with the comprehension aspect. You usually find that's the rarest thing. So this is where we kind of reach the bottom of the funnel. So in my personal experience, children that do reach this stage of the struggle tend to have neurodivergent issues. They might be on the autism spectrum, and it's just that they really struggle with inference. So these can be assessed and address various different ways. Some diagnostics, which we're going to come on to later. Also something like there's a really good book called Reading Between the Lines, and it scaffolds this sort of inferencing skill. So it might start with just a picture of a boy with a pan cooking and he's making a pained face, and the question is just why does the boy's face look like that? And then it will build up to a sentence and a few sentences, and so you're slowly kind of scaffolding those inference skills. But that, in my experience, is a lot rarer. Usually in year 6, you find most children can decode pretty well, and if they can't, really sort of need to look at how they got to year 6 without decoding properly. It tends to be, and again, Steph, would be interesting to hear in your experience, it tends to be children that aren't particularly fluent at reading out loud in year 6. Would you say that's the case as well?
Yeah, I would say and research shows there's quite a big correlation between fluency and comprehension. If you're spending more time worrying about what the words say, you're not thinking about what the words mean or how these words in this context are put together to tell you something or show you something. Because retrieval's great, but actually it's those deeper, those inferring, those predicting, those summarizing things that we are trying to get them to, because we know those are the harder things. And we do something quite similar, Sophie. We look at their phonics first. So we look at who passed the phonics test, who had to redo it. Have you got any year threes who are still needing phonics intervention? And then second stage is look at their fluency. So we try and do words per minute. We're trialing it in 5 and 6 at the moment to maybe take it lower down. And then we look on comprehension and vocabulary, because I teach in a school that has a high percentage of AL learners. So we really have to go over vocab, kind of pre-teach a lot of vocabulary, so that when they're exposed to these words, they're like, oh, I know what that means, and I can now read around it. We sometimes get a lot of children who are new to school or have been out of school for a while and come into school. So it's really thinking about, how can I effectively use my TA? In a dream world, you have one all of the time. But like from my experience, and I'm sure from Sophie, from your experience, and Kate, yours too, you don't have a TA all of the time. If you do have them and they can facilitate a reading intervention, really letting them kind of run with it themselves. I'm quite lucky in that I do have a TA most of the time. And I do trust him kind of with my life. We cannot do everything. If you are the one who is listening to your readers at another time, using assemblies, using like other times in the day, but if you have a TA who can be trusted, I think my 3 kind of key things are making sure that it's organized. So does your TA know the expectations of this 4-week, 6-week, 8-week intervention? Is it their fluency? Is it their vocabulary? Is it their retrieval? Giving TAs a bit of ownership is really, really crucial. I think it makes them feel like they are worthwhile. And like, as a teacher, I am a bit of a control enthusiast. And I'm like, right, no, do this, then do this, then do this.
I think we all are, Steph. We all like the control, don't we?
I think it's important that if you've got a TA who can run with it, give them ownership over it, so that at the end you can check in, or halfway you can check in, or daily, wherever needed, you can check in. And I think that has really helped, definitely in these first 3 weeks. I know that like he knows when he needs to listen to my readers, and I trust that it just happens.
Yeah. I just wanted to add as well, I think all these techniques we've talked about in interventions, they're good to use just in whole class as well. Like the fluency techniques we discussed, that can be done as a whole class. And also as a comprehension strategy, which has been named different things. It's basically about sort of self-checking what you've read. And I find myself doing it a lot. And imagine, because I know you two are avid readers like me, I skim text quite a lot. If I know I'm getting to a boring descriptive bit, and I just skim it. And sometimes I'll get to a sentence and I think, hold on, that doesn't make sense to what I read previously. So I reread the sentence carefully and realize I've missed a word or misread a word or something. And I think that's quite good to model to the children, is that if they read something that doesn't make sense to them, I think a lot of the time the children just carry on because they don't think, well, I'll reread it again and try and work out why that doesn't make sense to me. So they're sort of checking their own kind of comprehension. Kate, are there any other sort of fluency or comprehension ideas or strategies you've used with struggling readers in the past, perhaps lower down the school even?
Yeah, it's a rare one, and I've only met one child in 25 years that had beautiful decoding, beautiful intonation, sounded as if she was really enjoying the text, and you would ask her the simplest of inference questions and she would not be able to reply. And that was the toughest nut to crack, because for all your other readers who were struggling with fluency, you did a lot of all the things you talked about, modeling and echoing, and I'll read a sentence, you read a sentence. and they were making progress. But this kid was really, really difficult to get to the bottom of it. And I think, and I don't even know whether I did get to the bottom of it completely, but a lot of it was about, because the answer wasn't right there in the text, and she was a kid who wanted to get everything right all the time. If it wasn't immediately apparent that she would be right, she wasn't prepared to give me a response. So because the inference questions involve a lot of deduction, and if someone's not confident enough to go, yeah, I'm gonna put my finger on that as a reason, because it's not right there for them and they're not sure enough that they're correct. It's about having the confidence to make deductions for some children, isn't it? I don't really know the answer, so I'm not going to say anything.
Yeah. I think that's why it's quite nice to have reading lessons that have no writing in them, though, as well, because I find a lot of children, I'd say to their parents at parents' evening, they're brilliant at answering questions when you just speak to them, but it's like they freeze when they get to the paper. Like you were saying, Kate, it's like, well, this has to be right because I'm writing it down. But if I say it to the teacher or say it to my friend and it's wrong, it doesn't matter because I can just change it. So it's nice to have a lot of that oracy going on in reading lessons as well, and not just about it being written. So I know, Steph, you've written a brilliant blog with kind of loads more of your ideas in it, which I'm sure will be linked somewhere for everyone to read. But we're going to be moving on to my favourite thing next, which I know Steph could talk hours about. So you're on a time limit, Steph, because we're going to be moving on to reading for pleasure. Right, so we've spoken about interventions, the nitty gritty, and that's kind of what we all want sorted in our head in autumn term in order to get the year up and running. But then you get after Christmas and you're very aware as a year 6 teacher that SATs is coming up in like 4 months. It's the beginning of May, isn't it? So you really have 4 months after Christmas, which can make it really easy to lose sight of reading for pleasure, because it can, you can fall easily into the trap of let's just give them loads of comprehension sheets and not worry too much about their reading diet. But with those struggling readers, really that's the most important thing to focus on. So, they've gone through 6 years of primary school already, Steph. These children are still reluctant readers. The year is running out. What are you doing to hook those readers and make them love reading again just before they leave primary school?
So I think it is an honor to be able to be given that kind of trophy to say, right, you are, and it's not just my job as the year 6 teacher, it's everyone before me's, but like we get to year 6 and some of us still don't like reading, and you come into my classroom and then there are just books everywhere. And genuinely, I look around my room like, oh, there's no more space in this classroom anywhere. And I think reading for pleasure has to start from the teacher. I think in everything that we do, we are the role models. Like in English, you model the writing. In maths, you model the methods. So we should do the same. Even if you aren't particularly a teacher who enjoys reading, I think we have to do that fake enthusiasm thing. So my class every day, 1 to 1:15 after lunch, they read in silence every single day. It's a great regulation strategy. They've just been running around. They're wild as kites. They come in and all they want to do is chatter, and it calms them right down. So as the children are reading, I will do the register and then I will read myself. So I'm currently reading a book and it lives on my desk. And the children know that this is Mrs. Rhodes's book that she will read during silent reading time. And the first few days, they're a bit like, she reading? We're reading too. And then it just becomes the norm of Mrs. Rhodes is also reading. And then I will model like talking about my book with them. So then they hear, oh, well, when I talk to my friend about my book, this is how I talk about it. This is what I'm going to talk about. I talk about what I like, what I don't like, because I've done that with them. Like every week we'll have a little check-in. What have we read? What are we reading currently? What do we like about it? What do we not like about it? And they're slowly but surely picking up that, like, Mrs. Rhodes is also a reader. This is how we talk about books. And I think that is probably like the most important thing. In everything else, we're the models. So we also need to be the models. On my classroom door, we've got a Mrs. Rhodes has read, and all the books, just the covers of the books, and all of the children through school are like, oh, Mrs. Rhodes, what's that? And my class are now like, oh, Mrs. Rhodes, what's that about? And they'll luckily find the books that I've read in the library.
Is your door big enough, Steph, for all the books?
Not yet. It is at the minute. I'm quite lucky in that I have a class library. All of our classes have, even if it's just a bookshelf of books, but we also have a school library. In the school library, they're organised by author, but in my classroom, they're organised by genre. And I think that is quite a difference for them to get used to, but it's quite important. One of the first lessons of reading is about what do you like to read and what do you not like to read. And we talk about how you can like to read fantasy. Like, that is my thing. I love a fantasy book. Anything that's about magic or dragons, I'm there. I'm in. Instantly. But the children know that, if you want a book about magic, you go to the fantasy section. If you want a book about...
Sorry.
Kate, what have you got?
This is my beautiful hardback copy of The Hobbit.
Oh, wow.
That had to have this moment.
If you want a book about magic, then you look in the fantasy box. If you want a book that's scary, you might look in I call it the sci-fi box, but it's like sci-fi and horror kind of merged together, because I don't have all the room in the world. And we talk about and we look at books and we go, all right, based on this cover, where do you think this will live? Based on this cover, where do you think this will live? And sometimes they get it wrong, but then I like to go, well, why do you think that? And actually pulling in that justification is quite a nice lead up to a bit of a SATs question where you have to prove this, because then they're proving, that might live in that box because it's got a dragon on, but it's actually something else. And we're trying and link it to what we're writing. So we just read an adventure story. So then we have like loads of adventure stories out. So they see models of what it is that they've got. I also have like my favorites. So these are books that have come out in the last 5 or 6 years that I will put my hand on being my favorites. If anyone's looking for a recommendation, Orphans of the Tide by Struan Murray is one of the greatest children's books ever written. And that is a hill I will stand on. It's one of the deeper ones. It's like a chunky one, but it's incredible. I got to the end and went, what? Anyway, I love books. Something else I do in my library, we call them post-it note recommendations. So we start the year with my recommendations. So the books on the front will have a post-it note on the front that says, if you love books about science, you might love this. Or do you want to know more about politics? Read this. Because I've got non-fiction, fiction, and poetry in my library. And then eventually the recommendations stop being mine and they start being the children. So I'll just go to a select few and go, you just finished that. Did you enjoy it? Yeah. Can you just write a few words? Why did you enjoy it? And now one of the books that we've got in the library's got about 6 post-it notes because 6 children loved it. And I think it's given them a lot of ownership over your library. So even if you can, maybe if you've got 2 really readers, children who love reading and get through books, maybe just task them with it and then they can train other children to do it. So then it grows. It's not just your 2 really good readers or your readers who love reading. They can then help each other to write recommendations. And it does get them talking as well. Ooh, you've got this, you've got this. Something else we talk about is having a diet of books. We're very lucky to be in an age where graphic novels and illustrated novels are now becoming a thing. And children will naturally, look, this is pictures and it's like a comic. Can I just read these? And we talk about, no, you can't just read them. So we talk about you wouldn't just eat carrots. So you have to have a diet. So that I let them read graphic novels, but they read 2 or 3, then I have to read something different. Like I've got lots of football-loving boys. They wouldn't just read books about footballers. Try and diversify it. And even me within my library, I've now got books that are about cricketers, that are about rugby players. So it's not just footballers that they're seeing. Something that 1 or 2 teachers find quite controversial is I let children not finish a book.
How dare you?
I know. But I think it's important that children are allowed to not finish a book. If you're not enjoying it, you cannot finish it. If you're watching a movie, for example, and you're not enjoying it, you're not going to make yourself get to the end. But they have to give it a good go. They have to give it 20, 30 pages, a couple of chapters to actually get there. And then I'm like, right, okay, no, you've given it a go. It's not for you. Amazing. You can change it.
I think so. You have up the poster of it's called The Rights of the Reader. I think it's by Daniel Pennack. It's that, and Quentin Blake's illustrated it, and it's got, like, I've just got it now, the right not to read, the right to skip, the right not to finish, the right to read it again. It's great, isn't it? So if anyone hasn't heard of that, it's a great resource. It's available online everywhere to just print and have up in the classroom.
We talk about it as well. We talk about all of the different rights, and you inevitably get that child who goes, well, that says I can't finish. I'm like, yes, we have to give it a go. But
yes. Yeah.
So letting them read graphic novels, letting them read illustrated novels. So they're books that have got like illustrations throughout. The Loki series by Louis Stowell is a great example. Children who find reading a bit trickier or are maybe dyslexic, there's a great publisher called Barton Stoke who publish books on like special paper with a special font, and they are content appropriate, but like reading age younger. So the children are reading books for children their age, but they're just a little bit easier. So I would definitely check them out. I've got a whole box full of them, and they're called short reads because some children a 200-page novel is really intimidating, whereas these 100 pages, it's a stepping stone to reading a longer book. I think something else that really is really important is having a class text and making it like purposeful. So at the beginning of the year, we chose between 3 novels to be our class novel at the end of the day. We read to our children every single day, 10, 15 minutes. Sometimes it's before lunch, sometimes it's after lunch, sometimes it's at the end of the day. Try not to let it fall by the wayside. I'm definitely guilty of in the past. Oh, it's 3 o'clock. Oh, we need to tidy up. Oh, we need to do this. We need to do this. And actually letting class novel fall by the wayside when actually it really matters. So this first half term, we're reading Escape Room by Christopher Edge, which is it's like a thriller mystery, and they're really loving it. And then next half term, I won't choose a thriller as one of the options because then they've had that text choice before. And they really liked like looking at the cover, reading the blurb, seeing what they think of it. And we talked about democracy, which was quite nice. So there's quite loads you can get in there. Reading workshops. We lead reading workshops with parents, and this can be done in lots of different ways. So we do it all the way from early years up to year 6. So for mine, it'll be a case of, right, this is the kind of books that we look at. We'll talk to the parents about the importance of genre and reading and going to the library and still reading with and to your child. And then we get them to look at like an age-related text, and can the parents answer any of the questions? And they get to do it with their child, so it's quite a nice experience for them. Something else that is also becoming more widely available is virtual workshops. I know Scholastic email out workshops, and I'm sure they can be found on their website. Waterstones sometimes do them, and they're generally free. Obviously, you can pay for author workshops just one-on-one, but we know school budgets can't be stretched sometimes. So getting authors involved in your children's day-to-day, or getting them to just watch an author talk about their book. Some of them will never meet an author, so getting them to see it and go to these events, yes, it's virtual, makes such a difference.
Kate, you've got a nice story about that, haven't you? Your class once writing to an author.
I had the sweetest bunch of year 4s who adored Paddington. I think it was the year the first film came out, so we were reading Paddington before the film came out, and so we wrote to Michael Bond just to say, how much they'd loved it, and they all wrote individual letters. I wrote a covering letter. We posted them off to the publisher. We got a handwritten letter back from Michael Bond, and amongst the other lovely things he said in it was, "Thanks for writing to me, children. I mean, most people think I'm already dead." But you can imagine how delighted I was to get all these letters. At least I think I'm still alive.
In some cases, it means more to the author than it does the children, I imagine.
Well, honestly, I photocopied the letter so all the children could take a copy home. But he also sent photographs of Paddington and a guinea pig, because he wrote Olga the Polga as well. So the children not only enjoyed the book we were reading together at the time, but a lot of them were so motivated after that. They went off to find all his other books, and it was just so lovely. I've still got that letter.
Steph, if you can give us one more, what would it be to wrap it up?
One more thing. Oh gosh, that's so hard. It can't just come from you. It has to be a school-wide thing. So if it's something you're passionate about, go and speak to your English lead, go and speak to your SLT, get them on board.
Steph, you've shared so many amazing ideas. There's only a few that I had in mind that you hadn't shared. I know you've got loads more. We just ran out of time. I like to do a vote for the book. So lots of books that I know have worked in the past, kind of putting them head to head. So kind of reading a bit of the blurb, sharing a bit with the class, and then putting them head to head and getting them to vote a bit like, head to head match until you get to the winning one, basically. And then it gets the kids excited for the ones that weren't chosen. Oh, can I read that one? Can I read that one? And you can hand those out. Maybe it's just me, but when I listen to things, I can't keep my hands still. I like to doodle. It sort of helps me listen. If I'm told to just keep still and look, my mind's then wandering elsewhere. So whenever I read a story to the class, I tell the kids that they can doodle as well, as long as they're not passing messages or anything. But that kind of embeds this real feeling of enjoyment of listening to a class story with the children. And then I wanted to ask both of you as well, kind of controversial. Some schools use reading rewards as a way to incentivize reading and reading for pleasure. Steph, what are your thoughts on reading rewards?
Hard pass. No, I don't think it's fair to reward the children who like reading over the children who don't enjoy reading.
Yeah. Kate, do you have any additional thoughts on reading rewards?
Well, it's giving them a message that reading isn't its own reward.
Yeah.
And I've got a bit of a problem with that as well.
Yeah. And lastly, Steph, for the cynics among us that might say, you've only got a few months left in year 6. If they don't like reading by the time they've got to January in year 6, what's the point of all of this? That you're never going to win them over. What would you say?
You want to make a lifelong reader. You don't just want to make a year 6 reader. You want them to go into year 7 and still love reading, so that when they get into high school, when they get into life, when they become adults, they remember that book that got them into reading, or they remember that book that made them go, that was amazing. It's not just about now, it's about forever.
I totally agree. And as much as I'd love to talk about reading for pleasure for ages, there is a really important thing coming up in year 6 that we must focus on. Okay, so this is the scenario. We're in January. We've set up our reading interventions. We know what we're going to be doing for reading for pleasure, but SATs is very much on our minds because we're year 6 teachers. When is it never? When is it ever not on our minds, to be quite honest? But good reading pedagogy is to read broadly, read for pleasure, talk about the text, all the lovely things that you talked about, Steph. That is really brilliant for them. But you've still got kids that aren't going to reach ARE at this rate. And you're under pressure from whoever, whatever. You really know that these kids can get there. You're not sure quite what to do. I don't know about you, Steph. I find that really, really hard because in maths and grammar, I find it really not easy, but it's much easier to know how to plug the gaps. The gaps are really obvious. You know what to do to plug them. But in reading, it's kind of hard to know what do you do apart from shove endless comprehension sheets at them. I mean, how do you feel when it comes to January and you're thinking about those kids that might not make it?
You just go a bit like, what's next?
Yeah. I think that's it. I've not seen an answer to it yet. On social media, a lot of the time, year 6 teachers are asking, what are you doing for reading? Can you, and people are saying, oh, we'll just give them examples of this 3-mark question from this resource website, and just putting more stuff in front of them, which isn't necessarily helpful. So LBQ have come up with a solution for this, and the lovely Kate is going to demonstrate, because this is something that we can actually put in place alongside your reading curriculum and what you are normally doing for reading, something that you can use alongside it to really help those struggling readers in the run up to SATs. Kate, over to you.
Okay, well, we're really excited about this, and I'll take you on a little whistle-stop tour around our new Year 6 reading SAT Springboard scheme. We've got 7 reading diagnostics. Each one's got an original text and 20 comprehension questions. And these texts they do vary in genre. We've got science fiction, and we've got historical, and we've got non-fiction. They increase in difficulty across 7 diagnostics. We've got the Lexile ranges shown on each one in the notes here. And they all conform roughly to the difficulty and the word counts of the text from recent SATs reading papers over the past 4 years or so. Because a lot of the time it's stamina, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's reading stamina. So, actually, before I carry on, can I just say, it really is our dearest hope that these texts are not so satsified that they can't be viewed as reading for pleasure. We have thought long and hard about really engaging our readers with this content, and we've got aliens on motor hover bikes, in fact, and we've got intrepid explorers, and we've got ice hockey dramas, and we've got a myth with a twist, amongst other things. We would actually really just love it if pupils just enjoy the stories and the non-fiction texts on offer, and that they become part of broadening their reading diet. However, they do have diagnostic capabilities. So back to diagnostification. These 7 diagnostics could be set at the start and end of each half term from autumn 2 onwards, or teachers might prefer to run them monthly from October, or fortnightly from the start of the spring term. It's totally up to the teachers. And you can see here, I've got a results matrix of my test class, and you can see that all the question level analysis is already done for you. It's all marked. Here's the question level analysis. You can view pupils' responses to precisely what the misconceptions were on that particular question, and then you can address that accordingly. You could even send these questions out individually after a bit of discussion as ad hoc questions. So you can tackle a reading diagnostic question by question like that. But we also have an analyze and action feature. So having done a reading diagnostic question set with the text and the 20 questions, the platform will suggest a particular question, particular area to focus on. And the teacher can always decide that they want to focus on another one. I mean, this one looks like it's been answered incorrectly by 65% of the pupils, so teachers might want to set that one instead. So they can add it to the class scheme, and it'll appear here. So while this is one of the strategy sets, while they do group questions by SATs content domain, they're not designed to teach pupils how to infer, because we all know it's much more complicated than that. But the purpose of these is to expose pupils to questions similar to the ones they've struggled with, but in the same familiar context of the original text, and with little extracts rather than the big chunk of text, to help build their confidence when tackling questions across those SATs content domains. And it's these strategy sets that include the open text answers that will help pupils practice the 2 and 3 mark questions that are found in the reading SATs. So feedback to these is given in the form of self-evaluation against a marking criteria, similar to what's in the SATs marking criteria, and also in the form of exemplar answers, as you can see there. So give yourself a point for including either of those things, and then an example answer for them to learn from So we're hoping that's going to help pupils really reflect on their own answers, and it can be a teaching point in front of class as well as individual. As well as doing the class suggestion, the platform will suggest strategy sets for individual pupils as well. So they're all suggested 2 strategy sets after doing their reading diagnostic. And the platform will suggest those, but again, teachers can override that and set other questions accordingly. And alongside those, there's a further reading task. So these are from the same genre as the diagnostic. So these are all sci-fi texts. So they'll have read the original diagnostic, they'll have had a go at some strategies sets, built up a bit of confidence, learned a strategy or 2 to help them deal with it. And then according to their score on the original diagnostic, they can be allocated another sci-fi text. This one has a lower Lexile than the original. This one's got the same Lexile as the original, should be similar in difficulty. And if they need a bit more challenge, this one's a higher Lexile than the original diagnostic. So you can allocate those to your pupils, and then they can hopefully apply those strategies that they've learned to a new and suitably challenging read. And in that way, we're hoping to build confidence and help pupils see themselves as capable readers. As an absolute minimum, after completing 7 of these diagnostics, they will have read 14 new texts, all of a similar length and pitch to the SATS reading papers across 7 different genres. They'll have used over 140 new words in context and become really familiar with answering SATS-style questions across all those SATS reading content domains, and learned a range of strategies, we hope, for tackling similar questions in new texts. We've had some great feedback so far, but we really, really hope you and your pupils love it.
I just think already that gives me so much more confidence in going towards SATs, because, well, first of all, saving all that paper of the comprehension sheets and the photocopying the papers and things and putting them in front of the kids, but actually, you know, all the marking and the QLA, and then what do you do with the QLA on a reading paper? And I don't know, Steph, what's your reaction to seeing those as a fellow Year 6 teacher?
Honestly, I think my heart just wants to sing. I just want to go, ah, like, it is doing the job. We needed something to do.
Yeah.
And knowing that actually we can give individual children what they need, and I don't need to think about, all right, okay, I need to put these guys with these guys, but these 2 don't work very well together. Like, there's an iPad or there's a tablet or whatever it is technology wise, and you focus on what you need. And my TA could take a group who need to work a bit quietly, and they don't need to worry about marking anything because it's done. It's just amazing. Honestly, I'm so happy.
It's just great, isn't it? Because it actually gives you a practical tool to use, when before you're kind of just stabbing in the dark. Like, what am I doing to help my kids with reading? And this is just going to prepare them in such a way that makes you feel confident. Also, the time-saving element and the workload that is just absolutely taken off of our hands is amazing. And I really want to read about the alien on the hoverbike, Kate. So I should be having more of a nose of that one later. Maybe that'll be my nighttime reading tonight. But yeah, they look incredible, and I'd just be so excited to get going with them. Okay, we've discussed so much to do with reading today. Hopefully you've walked away, or you're going to walk away with some really practical, easy to implement strategies. So if we think about the beginning of the year, getting our interventions running and set up, we want to look at that kind of funnel approach of who still cannot decode properly and putting things in place for them, who isn't a fluent reader and putting something in place for them, and then who is still struggling to comprehend and putting something in place for them, which takes us onto the reading diagnostics that Kate just discussed. Steph, if you had to summarise your reading for pleasure, what would be your kind of top 2 or 3 takeaways from that?
I think you need to be the model as the teacher. Read with them. Make sure your children get a diet of texts, whether that's from you or from the library, and trying to get parents involved, however that looks, whatever that looks like. Probably top 3 things I would say.
Fab. So we've got our reading intervention set up, We've got the momentum keeping going with our Reading for Pleasure into the spring term. And then we've got those amazing reading diagnostics created by Kate to actually help the children in an effective way in the run-up to SAT alongside your reading curriculum as well. So if you want to read more, Steph has written loads about reading interventions, and there'll be a link to her blog in the caption. And hopefully, Steph, soon you're going to write us more about Reading for Pleasure, I hope, because there's loads more to say on that. If you'd like to trial the reading diagnostics, a link also in the caption. And just good luck, because I know how difficult it is in the run up to SATs from this time of year. So thank you everyone for joining us, and I hope you walk away with something useful.